I'm Audrey, but on trail I'm known as Glow Stick. In 2018, I quit my job to thru-hike the Appalachian Trail from Georgia to Maine. I often get asked, how do you make a thru-hike happen? So I just wanted to offer my advice on how you do that. Keep in mind, this is just based on my own personal experience. Other people may have differing opinions, but here's what I think. Number one, save your pennies. It costs a lot more than people think to complete a thru-hike. And one of the number one reasons that people have to end up getting off trail is because they run out of money. So don't be one of those people. Save more than you think you need. According to the Trek, which, if you're unfamiliar, is a website dedicated to all things long distance backpacking, the average thru-hiker spends between $3,500 and $6,500 on a thru-hike. According to the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, the average thru-hiker spends about $1,000 per month that they're on trail. And a thru-hike of the AT typically takes between 5 and 7 months. So that means they recommend that you have between $5,000 and $7,000 to complete your hike. In addition, if you're like me and you have to quit your job in order to thru-hike, then you're gonna need some extra money, some extra cushion for when you get off trail. So it's gonna sound like a lot. Again, everyone's different. Some people do cheaper thru-hikes, some people do more expensive thru-hikes. But in my experience, I would recommend you save at least $10,000. Then you'll have as much money as you need on trail, a little extra for when you're done, and then even a little extra for if, God forbid, something happens while you're on the trail, you get injured or have to take some extra time off, whatever, you'll have extra money to deal with that. So that's my number one, save your money. Number two, train as much as you can ahead of time with a heavy backpack on your back. No matter how great of hiking shape you're in, unless you've been training with a backpack, you're gonna be hurting once you get on the trail. I learned this the hard way when I got on the AT. I'm not nearly as active in the winter as I am in the other seasons. I started the AT at the very, very beginning of spring. I was not nearly as fit as I should have been, and I was definitely not fit with a backpack, and I suffered for it. They say that it takes 4 to 6 weeks to get your trail legs with your backpack, and I found myself counting down the days when I was on trail, being like, when are my trail legs gonna be here? When are my trail legs gonna be here? So, take my advice, don't do what I did, actually train with your backpack as much as you can ahead of time before you get on the trail. That should also help prevent overuse injuries, which are super, super common on the AT, and injury is another one of the number one reasons that people get off trail. So train ahead of time. Number three, I would recommend getting AWOL or Guthook for navigation. AWOL is a book or a PDF, and it basically tells you where you are on the trail, where the campsites are, where the water sources are, where you can get off at road crossings, where you can go resupply, things like that. Guthook is similar, but it's an interactive app that works on GPS, and it does work when you don't have service. So I would recommend getting one of those two things for navigation. Get your gear and test it ahead of time. Go out when it's raining, go out when it's snowing, test it all out, make sure you like everything, make sure you're comfortable, make sure you're staying warm at night, and get something different if it's not working for you. I mean, on the AT, it's easy enough to get to an outfitter. You know, there are thousands of people that attempt thru-hikes every single year. The trail communities really cater to them. I mean, you can get off to go to an outfitter in Neal's Gap, which is just about 4 or 5 days into the trail, depending on how quick you're going. Maybe even less if you're very fast. And you can replace some of that gear, but it's just gonna be a lot easier for you, and you can probably get things a little bit cheaper if you figure out all that stuff ahead of time and dial in your gear ahead of time. And while we're speaking of gear, I would recommend that you get the lightest gear that you can afford. This is another thing that I did not do correctly before my thru-hike. I mean, I had pretty good gear, don't get me wrong. But I didn't do maybe as much research as I should have to get the lightest of the light stuff. And I kind of suffered for that too. My pack was way too heavy when I started the trail. It was over 40 pounds. I can't remember exactly. I got a little shakedown at Amicalola, and I shaved off a few pounds, but my pack was still significantly more heavy than a lot of my friends on trail, just because I didn't do that extra research and get the most ultralight stuff that I could get. So save your body some grief, get the lightest stuff you can afford. I would recommend putting in some time if you're not one of those lucky people who gets to keep their job and go back when you're done with your hike, or obviously if you're a retiree. But if you're not one of those people and you have to find a new job when you get off trail, I would recommend doing as much as possible in advance to prepare for that situation. Update your resume, update your LinkedIn. If you have a professional website, update that. Make a list of companies that you would like to work for once you're off the trail, that you could see yourself sending in a resume, applying for jobs, because it's kind of traumatic getting off the trail. And personally, I suffered from post-trail depression, and so that made my job search even harder when I was dealing with this really tough emotional transition to have to go and search for a job. It's just very stressful, no matter how you look at it. You're going from this freedom every day of being out on the trail and being with friends and having the time of your life to being like, well, shoot, I have to be an adult and be a professional and get a job. So I would just recommend doing as much as you can ahead of time to make that process easier for yourself. Next, I would recommend that you get some sort of health insurance. You never know what's gonna happen while you're out on the trail. Injuries are very common. Illness is fairly common. It couldn't hurt to have some form of health insurance. I personally got travel insurance through a company called Alliance. It was pretty cheap and it came with emergency medical coverage. I also asked my doctor in advance for some advice, and I asked her to fill extra prescriptions for me. So I think that I got like a general antibiotic in case I got an infection out there. She gave me Giardia medicine. I had a couple of daily prescriptions that I took, so she was able to help me get those filled for farther in advance than I normally would have. So that might be a conversation that you want to have with your doctor ahead of time. And lastly, I would just say that if a thru hike is something that you're dreaming of and that you really want to accomplish, find a way to make it happen. I've never been a person with a lot of money. I don't come from money. I have to work. But I planned for a few years in order to do my thru hike of the AT. I'm planning again to do more thru hikes. So right now I'm just saving my pennies as best as I can, working on my career in the meantime. If you really want to make it happen, and you will figure everything out on trail that you need to know. So I would say just, prepare as best as you can, save your money, get in shape, do all these other things that I mentioned. But in the end, you really just have to take a leap of faith. Follow your dream and go. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram at AudiePain.